And I just, I want to say, like, in terms of feminism and psychology, because sometimes it's very obvious when those things intersect.
Mm-hmm.
And other times it's less obvious, but I always say this to my students and to sort of when I give seminars on methods and things like this, that I am a feminist, and so everything I do is feminist. In other words, the view that I have on the world and the way that I speak to my students and the way that I write up my projects and the topics that I choose to focus on, they're all feminist in orientation. But sometimes the finished product doesn't necessarily look feminist in the way that we might see in a women's studies journal. But that's a very strategic decision. So in a project looking at, I'll just give you one example, in the project looking at women's decisions around whether to see a doctor or not, I may choose to write, and I do this, I choose to write 2 articles out of that data. So one article may look at just a very clean, grounded theory, looking at sort of the decision-making, the findings about how women make these decisions, what are the role of the partner, and so on. And I'll publish that in a journal where I know that my target audience is going to read it. So that means that if I want oncologists to read that and to treat women in a better way when they come in to see them, I need to talk to these oncologists in a way that they can hear me. If I come in with an article that I would publish in Feminism and Psychology to the Journal of Clinical Oncology, A, it's not going to get published. B, even if it did get published, nobody would be able to understand it because they have no frame of reference in which to understand that. So my goal is to improve care for women. And so I need to speak in a way that the oncologist can hear. But then I'll also say, okay, but now I want to unpack this theoretically a little bit. I want to actually bring in the feminist theory. And so then I'll take that same data and rewrite it for social science and medicine. Where I talk about, I'll do a discourse analysis and I'll talk about, what are these competing messages or discourses that women are navigating that are very, very gendered when they're making decisions about seeking care. And how do we understand this a little bit more critically from looking at power relations and class differences and so on. So I always try to, write it in both ways, in 2 ways, speak 2 languages, because the goal at the end of the day is to communicate in a way that people can hear you. And in order to improve women's lives and to improve the lives of our participants, we need to speak clearly, first of all, and we need to speak in ways that people can hear. And so they're very strategic decisions, but they're both feminists. But you wouldn't be able to look at that article in, one of these oncology journals and say, oh, yes, this is a feminist researcher. You wouldn't be able to see it from looking at the text. But the message that's coming through is very feminist. It's about empowering women. It's about improving their care. It's about increasing compassion of doctors towards women.
The whole goal of it is very feminist. And I'm smiling because I'm recalling something you said earlier in the interview, which was when your mother told you that sometimes you need to go around, you don't need to just go right up and confront. And it sounds like in some ways you've taken her advice, right?
Yes, exactly. That's why I said earlier that some ways that was very, very good advice. Because even though it was a different context, I think that she was onto something there about how do we communicate in ways that that are the most efficient for getting what you want. And in terms of the health work, that's been really, really, really important to me.